And with that, we're actually right at noon. So to keep us on time, I'm going to get started. Again, thank you everyone for joining us for this SMA Learning Series. I'm Leslie Burkus, Executive Director for the Society of Municipal Arborists, or SMA as we go by. Thanks. Here's my background. I wanted to bring a little of my view to you. The red buds are popping in my part of the world. The bees are back. It's my favorite time of year because I'm so happy that I can help provide some wildlife and biodiversity in my little corner of the world here. So I hope that you are having a great kickoff to your planting season if it's that time of year for you. I know it's a really busy time, and that's exactly what we want to talk about here today because it can be high pressure during those planting seasons times. You've got a lot of trees you got to get in the ground. A lot of people are asking a lot of you. It can be hard. I've been in your shoes, and David Lefcourt will talk about it as well in just a second. With that, I wanted to go through just a few things about SMA. Just to kind of give you some orientation to our organization. If you're a member, you likely know some of this stuff. If you are not, welcome. Happy to have you here. And with that, I'll get started. So today's agenda will start with an introduction to SMA, presentation from David Lefcourt, City Arborist and Tree Warden with Cambridge, Massachusetts after that. He'll talk about too many demands, not enough resources, might start sounding a little familiar to you right now, how he has implemented their urban forest master plan, and how that really started to make things switch for their community, for their city. And they're really seen as a model in the Northeast and across the country. So really eager to hear from David. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention David is also a board member of SMA. So we thank him for his service there too. And then we'll end with plenty of time for Q&A to get your questions answered. A few notes about today. I know people will wonder, this webinar is being recorded and it will be shared afterwards. So if you wanted to share it with colleagues or just wanted to refer back to it, we will share it. This is approved for one ISA CEU. I will be submitting a form. I'll be submitting them on your behalf, but I do need to get your cert number. So I have a form to collect all of that at the end of this presentation. So I will submit that to you guys and you'll fill out that form and then I'll get them submitted. And then I have you all muted now, but when we get time for questions, I will allow everyone to come off mute or use the chat. You could sure feel free to chat things as we're going too. So with that, if you are not familiar with SMA, our mission is to build the confidence, competence, and camaraderie of all professionals who manage trees and forests to create and sustain more livable communities. You might have heard me put a little emphasis there on all because our organization sees anybody who is managing trees in communities large or small. You could come from the smallest urban area in my home state of Iowa. We're 2,500 and fewer for most of our towns. That is where people live, and we want trees where people live. You might come from a much larger community, millions of people. We want to help support you in your management and planting of trees because we want the same thing you want, is more trees on the ground and more trees cared for. SMA was founded in 1964. We are a membership-based organization and we're international. We have global membership from people across the world, many of you from the United States or Canada. But again, we are a membership-based organization that has global people doing the same work. And it's so wonderful to think of that. People across the world doing the exact same work, trying to get more trees planted. We are a professional affiliate of the ISA, and that means that we work together to try and get more information, more credential holders, help make sure you feel prepared to get your credential, a relationship that goes multiple ways. So we work really closely with ISA. And we are a partner in community forestry with Arbor Day Foundation, ACT, and the Urban Wood Network. All that to say that it takes a lot. Every person is playing their part, trying to help you get more trees, trying to achieve our global goals of greater urban tree canopy. So we work really closely with all those partners. With that, what SMA brings and what we hope and want to do for you as a member is be your representative, get you a seat at the table because you're busy getting the work done every day. So how can we make your job easier? Some of the ways that we are doing that now is you might have heard that there's going to be some changes and some new things happening with credentialing. Society of American Forests is looking to launch an urban forest credential. while ISA also has a municipal specialist, and many of you might hold that credential. So hearing that, you now hear that there's potential 2 urban forester credentials happening in our sector. Might lead to some confusion. Maybe it's a lot of excitement. Maybe you're thinking, oh my, how many more credentials and memberships can I hold? If you're feeling any of those things, I get it. Valid. We want to be there though. So just to let you know, SMA is really active in each of those conversations. We will be providing information as it becomes aware to us so that we can make it as clear as possible for you, the person who might be getting a credential down the line. SMA is also a representative on a number of committees like the iTree Executive Committee, ANSI Standards, and SFI Urban and Community Forestry Standard. And we also are advocating on behalf of urban forest professionals with allied affiliates. For example, we've been having conversations with APWA. Many of you are probably housed in a public works department. How could we help speak to those allied professionals to help your bosses, the people making decisions on urban forestry, make them be more aware of it so it makes your job easier. So we want to be a representative and help you have a seat at the table. Other ways that SMA is helping support people is through our Municipal Forestry Institute. I bet we have a lot of grads on this call, on this webinar. What I would say right now is we're taking a focus year in 2023, which just means we're trying to be really strategic and forward thinking about what MFI is going to teach the future and current urban forester. If you are an alum, you should have gotten a survey yesterday to ask for your feedback. If you didn't, feel free to reach out to me. And then mid-year, we look to open up registration for 2024. So go to our website, you can sign up there to get notified or find out a little bit more about what MFI is. The Arborist Exchange Program is a great member benefit. If you've ever thought, I'd love to get to another city across the world, within the US, within Canada, within your country, this is a program that will help pay for your time, travel, and approved expenses to just go get in-depth, hands-on, see what it's looking like. Maybe you'll hear David here and say, I'd love to come see Cambridge's program. We'll talk with David. We can see if we can get an exchange set up. It could be one way, it could be two-way. Really would love to help people see programs in action. Applications are due May 30th, so it's coming right up. Give it some thought. The second round will be available on November 30th. I'm sure many of you are familiar with our City Trees publication. It's renowned. I am so proud of City Trees. It has wonderful articles to help profile the professionals coming up in our industry so you can learn from what they're doing, along with articles such as this one shared here about planning for urban forest management. So trying to get the information that you would need to advance your programs, or just something we might be able to share with people outside of our world to help them better understand the work we're doing. Every year we host a conference. I'm sure many of you have been to that, asking you to save the date for this year, which is going to be a little different. We're combining with the World Forum, and SMA's conference is going to be interwoven with that event. So save the date for October 16th to the 20th. Registration is now open. SMA will be hosting a reception in the evening, and really hope to see you there because this is exciting to have the World Forum in the United States this year, and really excited to have a lot of you there. Our next SMA Learning Series will be held on May 23rd. I'll drop a link in the chat so you can sign up and get easy access there. But we'll have iTree speak about what can you do in an afternoon. I love that concept of busy urban forester. What could you just sit down and try and get knocked out in an afternoon? The Davey Institute and U.S. Forest Service will be speaking and helping you understand the tools within iTree. I bet you've used them, you're familiar, but it's nice to have that refresher or just really hear the professionals explain how they're used. And that last bullet point, I really want to point out, they'll show you how to use their community engagement tools. With the IRA money on the table, Inflation Reduction Act money in the US, it's going to be really critical for community engagement. And this iTree tool will help you see how you can make that happen and make really thoughtful, science-based decisions on what areas you work with. So tune in for that. If you aren't already, we'd really invite you to join us on LinkedIn. This is where our professionals are gathering to hear from one another, where SMA posts a lot of updates or shares news happening in the industry. So please join your colleagues there. Love to see you. And finally, again, SMA is a global community. We are helping people around the world, your people, all come together and network, knowledge share, learn from one another. It's exactly what we're doing here today. I was speaking with David, and he was talking about some of the burnout he was feeling, and it was sounding really familiar to me. I've been in your shoes, ordering trees, trying to get them, homeowners complaining to me. I really just want to get this tree planted. I want to get that long, beautiful line of trees and do the big work, but I'm feeling really tired right now. So I was talking with David and it sounded so familiar. And I'm assuming, especially this time of year, Earth Day, Arbor Day, I bet it's been really busy. So that's what we want to do is help you hear from others and get connected and just stay energized, reinvigorated to keep doing that big work because your work is needed now more than ever. With that, I'm going to stop sharing. David, are you with me?
I am here.
Okay, so you should be able to share your screen now. I can see it.
All good?
Yep, looks good.
All right, so I guess it's my time. All right, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're tuning in from. As mentioned, my name is Dave Lefcourt. I am the current tree warden and city arborist for the city of Cambridge in Massachusetts. A little bit about myself. I've been with the city of Cambridge since September of 07. My past municipal experience was with the District Department of Transportation, Urban Forestry Administration in Washington, D.C. And my first municipal job was working for the town of Wellesley, where I actually kind of cut my teeth in the world of urban forestry in an indirect way. But hence, it's led me to where I am today. I am, as Leslie mentioned, I am a current SMA board member. I'm actually my second round on the board. So I'm pretty excited to be on, and it's definitely an exciting time to be part of SMA and with everything that's going on in the world of urban forestry and the IRA funding and all that stuff. So it's pretty exciting. I am also the current president of the New England ISA chapter, and I am also the education chair for the Massachusetts Tree Wardens and Foresters Association here in Massachusetts. And I'm also the past president of SMA and the Mass Tree Wardens, and another 6 months, I'll be the past president of New England ISA chapter. So I've been involved, as you can see, with a few different organizations over the years, but I've gained a wealth of knowledge from these different organizations and have definitely applied it towards my program and shared ideas with other folks throughout the country and beyond. So Cambridge, community just outside of Boston. Settled in 1630, so it's an older city for the United States and for Massachusetts, but it's tiny. It's less than 7 square miles. Sometimes it's faster to bike across town than it is to drive. But there's a lot of people packed in there. You know, the last census showed roughly 117,000 people in such a tiny area. And if you're not familiar, it's the home of Harvard and MIT and a ton of different pharmaceutical and tech companies in the area as well. So in Cambridge, we maintain almost 21,000 trees throughout the city. In this image here, the darker trees are our street trees, and the lighter green trees are our trees in parks, cemeteries, and other municipal grounds. It's broken down, as you can see here, roughly 13,500 are street trees, and the other 7,500 are sprinkled throughout the city that we care for. There's definitely, I don't know if you guys can see my mouse here, hopefully you can, but there's certain areas that are still under development, so we're hoping to get a bunch more trees in this part of town called the Alewife area, and then this part of town over here, which is called, well, it used to be called North Point, but now I think it's called Cambridge Crossing. A lot of developments going on there, so hopefully we're going to see this get filled in with a bunch of trees when that development's all done. Some of these other empty spaces here, like in the middle, that's where the Harvard campus is, and down here, so the trees aren't reflected because obviously we don't care for those trees. And down over here is the MIT area, or this whole area here is the MIT campus area. So that's, you know, filled in with some trees as well. So the early years, as mentioned, I started in Cambridge in September 07. When I got there, they had started to do an inventory It was partially completed, but it was sitting on the shelf. I think if I recall correctly, there was roughly 12,000 trees that had been inventoried at the time, and about a quarter, when we got done with the first round of trying to update it, about a quarter to a third of it was incorrect information because the inventory was initially started with some volunteer paid interns, so the inventory was a little rough at first. But we spent a lot of time over the years cleaning up that inventory by hiring summer interns that have gone through, and hence now we know we have just under 21,000 trees throughout the city, because we've practically completed the inventory by now. Another thing I inherited was a backlog request in the city. They had a computer-based program, but more or less you had to print out the stuff to go out in the field to inspect it, and then go back and log the information back into the computer. So, and it was a cumbersome program, and you could tell that the folks before me didn't like dealing with it. At times, I didn't like dealing with it, but just put our heads down and just started plugging through and trying to get the backlog cleaned up. Most importantly was planting requests. When I got there were folks in the city who had been waiting upwards of 7 to 8 years to have a tree planted in front of their house. So I made it my priority to get as many of the outstanding planting requests completed. And I was able to complete about 95% of those requests in about 18 months. And that made a lot of folks happy, because there was a lot of folks throughout the city that were just patiently, or some patiently, others were upset that they were waiting for so long to get trees in front of their house or business. At the time when I came into the city, we had 2 pruning contracts, one for street tree pruning and one for the park and cemetery pruning, other open space trees, and one planting contract. The cool thing is the city was already proactively cycle pruning throughout the city when I got there. And the other cool thing is when I started is that the Urban Forestry Division already had a good working relationship with other divisions and departments. Something I learned early on, because I ended up getting into a little bit of I was upset one time over a project that had happened early on when I first started. And one of the city engineers at the time was like, "Dave, relax, we're on your side," because where I come from, it was butting heads with the engineers. So it was nice to, come into a program where everybody wanted to work together and improve each other's programs or the assets they're caring for. And I put this in here because I thought it was cool, because I have this and then what our most recent budget was. But at the time for the Cambridge's budget was a little over $1.4 million that we had submitted for our Tree City USA application. So, and I'll share towards the end of this presentation what our current budget is. So at the time, our staff composed of myself as the city arborist and tree warden, and then the rest of the folks were the union crew, the forestry supervisor who supervised, the 2 working supervisors that managed the 2 tree climbers and the 3 forestry workers. The cool thing is, for the most part, since I've been with Cambridge, the in-house crew has been phenomenal. We've had a couple bad eggs over the years, but for the most part, it's one of the best municipal crews I've ever seen work. And the cool thing is that they take pride in what they do, and I push for early on trying to get certifications or encouraging folks to get their arbor certifications. So the union was able to start negotiating this. I think it happened first with the forestry division to incentivize certifications. So if you had a certification, you get an extra certain number of dollars per hour. And at the time, 5 of the forestry personnel took advantage of it and got their ISA certification. So it's pretty cool that we have, and you'll see that how our program's grown, but a good portion of our forestry crew are certified arborists, and it goes a long way with how the work is done in the city. And at the time, and it still is for the most part as well, that our in-house crew handles all the service requests, and like I said, they're very educated, very knowledgeable crew. And we have a decent amount of equipment, so we're able to handle about 99% of the tree emergency work that comes in. Obviously, every once in a while we have to bring a crane in for something, but for the most part, and they'll do the crane work as well. But it's cool that our in-house crew can handle all the most emergency work as well. In regards to the pruning cycle, when I came here, it had been maintained on a 6-year pruning cycle, but it was maintained sort of blindly. Like since the inventory wasn't completed, they didn't really have an idea, how many trees they were really pruning, but they just decided on a 6-year pruning cycle. And this new information, this second line here is, we're currently pruning roughly 3,300 trees between our 3 pruning contracts and what the work that the forestry crew does. But I'll kind of explain a little bit more, how this part of the program has evolved most recently. So one thing I give credit to SMA, one of the first things I give credit to SMA for, or which really helped for me was creating the EAB management program. I started it in 2014. It was actually the first EAB management program in New England. And at the time, this is when I was, talking to a lot of, SMA folks who were residing, in Canada, and like John McNeil is definitely one I talked to a lot, and some other folks out in the, Midwest that were, already years ahead of dealing with EAB. And, they obviously, if you're familiar, the first management plan for EAB was cut everything down, just try to eliminate the source. And then through research and other things, they found that treatment was the better option. And of course, in Cambridge, we don't cut down anything. We barely cut down anything if we don't have to. We go through many different steps to preserve trees in the city versus just cutting them down as a first step. So obviously, we found that, crunching numbers, it was definitely going to be cheaper to treat over the long run versus removal. So we did create our first EAB management program in New England, and it's going very well. We found our first EAB in 2018, but the population isn't growing as quickly as I thought it would. So it's going to be interesting to see what our numbers are for this year. Another thing that we created years ago was a water by bike program, where we stole this idea from Casey Trees from Washington, D.C., where we have summer interns. And at first it was just, 2 or 4 folks, as you can see in the pitch here, we hook up bike trailers to bikes, and they're biking around the city with roughly 300 to 400 feet of hose, and they're tying into fire hydrants, and they're watering as many young trees as they can on a block. And this is something that's, like is noted here, has been in place for about 10 years now. And at one point we were up to, I think, 12 water by bike interns pre-COVID, but we've since dialed it down. But we also have our forestry crew that goes out and does additional watering, and any trees that we plant under contract either have a 2 or 3 year warranty with it. So fast forward to now. So at first, when I first came to the city, the watering language is very loosey-goosey, and we were having a hard time having the contractors come back in and water the trees, which maybe folks from other municipalities have dealt with. So over time, we have decided to incentivize watering, so the contractor gets paid each time they go into the city and water a tree. But it's driven up our planting costs. But every tree in the city gets watered for the first 5 years of its life in the city. So the contractors water those trees roughly 25 weeks out of the growing season for the first 2 to 3 years, and then our water by bike interns and our forestry crew are going out there and watering the trees from years 3, 4, and 5. So here's where things start to get interesting for us in Cambridge, and things start changing. So we did our first canopy study in 2009 and showed that we initially had 30% canopy coverage, and then a follow-up study showed that we had in 2014 that we had lost 2% of our overall canopy in the city. And what was the reason for the canopy loss? And a lot of people were thinking, was it commercial development, because you're seeing a lot of tech firms come in and build and tearing down old buildings and removing trees and putting up new buildings and not leaving a lot of open space for planting trees and stuff like that. But it turned out it was actually majority of the tree loss, the canopy loss, was happening on residential properties. Just all the different trees throughout the city that were getting removed, collectively residential properties was contributing the most to the overall canopy loss. So obviously we were starting to get a lot of pressure from the public to do more. People were saying, both whether it was residents or our committee on public planting or city councilors were saying, we got to do more. What can we do to help forestry to improve, canopy loss? We shouldn't be, people shouldn't be allowed, it was go all over the place. People shouldn't be allowed to remove trees on private property, blah, blah, blah. All kinds of things were going on, people are asking, can we give the city, the forestry division more money, more resources? What do they need? So that one of the things that came out of it was we started the urban forestry master planning process in 2018, and also leading up to it, was the creation of the superintendent of urban forestry position. So at the time, it was, me was sort of at the top of the pyramid for forestry. And they said, we want to create the superintendent of forestry position. And I was obviously, upset that they were doing this at the time, because I was like, hey, this has, been my program for upwards of 10, 11 years, sort of running it. But they said, Dave, it's the right thing to do, blah, blah. So I wasn't too gung ho about it, because obviously I thought they were, kind of undermining my authority or my ability to do what I was doing at the time. But I'll explain a little bit more how that has, I've since changed my tune about that down the road. And then obviously another big thing that happened at the same time was the expansion of our existing tree ordinance to cover all parcels in the city. So at the time, the ordinance just covered large developments. Anything over 20,000 square feet, 20 or 25,000 square feet was the trees were protected on the ordinance, and the developer had to either replant the same number of inches that were removed and or pay into a tree fund. But this led to the expansion of on all properties. So and I just kind of I took the snippet from when it came out, but more or less back in 2019, there was a moratorium on tree removals on private property. So nobody could remove a tree in the city unless it hit a certain category, whether it's dead or dangerous. A structural engineer could determine that the tree was causing damage to their foundation or some dwelling. And there was another one that was thrown in there where if they felt like a tree could be removed but still increase the overall health of the canopy, then that was a legit reason. But for pretty much for a whole year, any healthy trees anywhere in the city, even for city property, could not be removed until we kind of worked out the regulations for this ordinance. And it was eventually passed by city council. But at the time, it was anything over 8 inches could not be removed unless it had a permit. And at the time, if a property owner, if a property owner removed a tree, if you were like a developer and you removed a tree for putting up a new house or something like that, you get charged $850 per inch. If you could prove that you were owner occupier, had a residency sticker or requirement, it was only 10%, so it'd end up being $85 an inch for the fine. And then this is the more recent version of it. When the city council voted on it, they determined that they dropped it down to anything 6 inches or greater was protected and had to have a permit to remove it. And then they added an exceptional tree definition as well for anything over 30 inches, which we really don't have a ton of trees in Cambridge that are over 30 inches, at least not for city-owned trees, but mostly on private property. There are some sprinkled throughout the city. And then obviously there's a whole mitigation thing for if you remove, so now you can remove any tree in the city, but if you want to remove a healthy tree to put in an addition in your house or swing set or something, you're gonna have to pay, a fee into the city. And that right now it's currently still $850 per inch. And then there's other ways that you can mitigate as well. You can plant some trees on your property as well to mitigate for that. But while this was going on, the urban forestry master planning process was underway. And we had our consultant, here's just a snapshot from the website showing who was involved with the planning of the master plan. And it was a very extensive process. I think when it was all said and done, the city spent somewhere around $1 million to create this urban forestry master plan. So there was a lot of funding put into this, but a lot of good things, as I'll show you shortly, there's a lot of good things that came out of it. But just here's the folks that are involved with the putting the whole plan together. And it was cool thing is we got we try to get as many residents that represented different parts of the city. There's 13 neighborhoods in Cambridge, so we try to get as many residents to represent different parts of the neighborhood. And then some of the other key stakeholders, we had somebody from Harvard, somebody from MIT, some from the different business districts to kind of, share their thoughts on how they expect the plan to be developed and how it could benefit, the residents, the business, the different institutions that are in the city. And the cool thing is, the plan was more or less completed in 2020, sort of a gray area because that's, smack dab during COVID. So things was kind of just all up in the air, but we're actively using our master plan, and I'll show you a little bit more down the road. One of the cool, some of you may have stumbled upon this on Google or visiting Cambridge's website, but one of the things that came out of the master plan process was this Healthy Forest, Healthy City document. And it's a great tool for both the residents or for other folks who are looking to create a master plan. But it just kind of it condenses the 400 some odd pages of the master plan into this very simple document that kind of shows the different things that the forestry division can be doing, other divisions or departments in the city, and how residents themselves can help improve the urban forest by just mulching properly, watering, stuff like that, curbing your dog. And here's this one snapshot of the document. I took this because this relates to the more or less, the forestry aspect of it, where I am, during the process, I'm more of just like the boots on the ground type of guy. I want to know what are the things that we can be doing forestry wise to help, increase the urban canopy, to keep the forest healthy, to expand it, to do all the things that we need to do. So these are just some of the cool things that came out of it and that we're actively doing. So obviously, we're planting now. For us to do our part to help improve the overall canopy, we're going to get, I think we're a year or two away, but eventually we need to forestry needs to plant 1,000 trees a year. And then the rest of the other folks in the state, whether it's residents, other institutions, need to plant 1,000 trees, and then it slowly expands. And I think either starting next year or the year after, forestry is tasked with planting 1,000 or 1,250 trees every year to help do our part to reverse the canopy loss. And you'll see in a sec how the newer data showing that we're slowly trending in that direction. But some of the cool things we're doing is, prune proactively, which the city is sort of doing, but we're able to expand our pruning program, and just promoting our different things that we're doing more. So more or less, as a result of the pressure from the public and city council and our committee on public planting, and as a result of the master plan process, the superintendent position was already sort of in the works a little bit before the master plan process started. So that person came on, and then the creation of the assistant city arborist position was created and filled in early 2020. And then we have since created an in-house planting crew. For the most part, 90+% of our trees were planted by contractor up until a couple of years ago, and now we're slowly trying to switch it so that we're planting most of our trees in-house. And I'll explain that a little bit more in a bit. So the cool thing is, which I didn't realize at the time, because as I mentioned before, when they first came to me and said, "Hey, Dave, we're going to create the superintendent forestry position," and of course I was a little insulted. It's like, "Hey, I've been running this program more or less for 10, 11 years now." But what I realized that after the superintendent forestry came on board, and then the assistant city arborist came on board, we were able to divide all the duties that I was doing myself for 10, 11 years. I didn't realize, as part of this description is, are you dealing with burnout? I guess at the time, or it wasn't until we really started splitting up duties, I didn't realize how burnt out I was. I more or less was running a program that I was able to add a few things, as you can see, like we were able to add the water by bike program with that, and we were able to add the EAB management program. But some other things I'm going to get into it in a little bit. They were pipe dreams of mine, but they were never going to happen because I was never going to have the time to do it, or we were never going to have the time. The forestry division was never going to have the time to do it because it was just myself trying to do all these different things. So now, as you can see here, we broke it up. And I'll have to admit, the two things that the superintendent of forestry does are the two things that I don't really enjoy doing part of my job. And there's been a couple of times I've been called into the fiscal manager's office and been yelled at for overspending on some of my contracts because just didn't have the ability to kind of keep some of the spending in check as I was managing the contracts over the years. But the cool thing is that person, he does a phenomenal job with managing the budget and dealing with the contracts, and he works well with the in-house crew. I still, my position was never designed to work directly with the in-house crew anyways, but so I sort of have like I come in from a different angle in how I work with the in-house crew, but they're great to work with, and they're like I said before, they're very knowledgeable. Most of them are certified arborists and really take a lot of pride in the work that they do. But the cool thing is that I was able to kind of focus on just a few things now. So I pretty much deal with all the pruning and removal service requests and the pruning contracts in the city. I work with the contractors constantly about how to do their projects, put in sidewalks, sewer lines, buildings without injuring or significantly impacting the existing trees or trees that are near their properties. And the cool thing is, we were most recently added a third pruning contract, which I'll go into in a sec. And then the assistant city arborist, she's incredible. She oversees the tree planting program and manages the private property tree removal permits. Because that's the one thing we realized, that when we expanded the tree ordinance and required everybody to apply for a permit for removals, is that it was going to take somebody a lot of time. And some of you may be already dealing with this, or and know how time consuming it is to deal with approving permits for private property tree removals. And if folks are thinking about adding this to your city or town, just know that it's a lot of work to manage private property tree removal permits, because you have people with different backgrounds in regards to IT technologies for submitting permits, to how to deal with submitting stuff, and or what qualifies under what different categories. So it's very time consuming. So the fact that the program has expanded to from myself as sort of being the management side of the program to at least 3 of us has been huge. And it's kind of it reinvigorated myself a couple of years ago when the assistant city arborist came on. I realized, wait a second, I guess I really needed this superintendent position to come on, and then obviously the assistant city arborist position as well. So as you can see here, when I first started in 2007, that was what we had. And then in 2023, and the one thing I didn't mention is we now have a 3-person in-house planting crew, where we plant, where they're tasked with either getting the tree wells prepped for planting, and planting bare root trees that we have healed in our in-house nursery. So the cool thing is, and this is one of my dreams I had, when I first started. This is at our municipal golf course. The picture in the upper left is the maintenance building. In the back here, I couldn't find some older pictures, but this used to be like a complete wasteland of just old broken down equipment and storage of old wood and stuff. But over the years, like this picture's probably taken, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, that it sort of got cleaned up a little bit, and the golf course folks were parking there. And then, as you can see in the picture, the other 2 pictures, we slowly started with piecemeal and a nursery together, and then we got some additional funding, and then we were able to create an area where we can heal in roughly 500 to 600 bare root trees, and we heal them in with mulch. We bring them in twice a year, fall and spring, and we have some bins for soil and mulch and stuff like that. It's got overhead irrigation, so all the trees are irrigated. But yeah, it's been huge that now that we have an in-house tree nursery. There's been some learning curves. Obviously, some of the things that we learned when COVID hit, we lost a huge number of trees because we weren't able to get the trees healed in a timely manner. The most recent headache that we have running a small nursery is that we suffered really bad rabbit damage or vole damage. We're not sure what animal it was, but about 75 of our trees, the bottom foot to 2 foot, the bark completely chewed off all the way around, and that was a surprise when we went to go look at the trees about 3 or 4 weeks ago. But the cool thing is that now we have compost tea brewers. So the little storage unit you see in the picture on the left, inside there we have 3 compost tea brewers. So all our newly installed trees get a soil drench of compost tea. So I think it's a soil drench of compost tea. So we're able to, kind of help inoculate the soils, because, working in an urban environment, the soils are not that great, and it's a very tough environment for the trees. So whatever we can do to help improve the soil conditions. That was one of so some of the things. These are all things that have came out of the Urban Forestry Master Plan. Create an in-house tree nursery so that we can plant more trees, improve the soil conditions. So one of those things was, the compost tea brewer. The cycle pruning program. So when I first came to the city, actually, I showed you the original map where we had 6 pruning zones. It literally was, I would just give the contractor one zone and say, hey, here's roughly 3,000 trees, go prune them. And trying to manage that was a nightmare. I had the contract set up so they get paid per tree price. I've since refined it, so it's a per tree price within a certain range, so 1 to 6, 6 to 12, and so forth. But since we have a newer work management system that ties into our tree inventory, I asked one of our folks in our IT department if they can kind of break down the pruning zones even more, so that I can give the contractors more bite-sized areas to work with, and this has been great. Where I can just literally, they have either an iPad or they can download the program onto their phone, and they get a batch of trees to prune. So right now, I think they're working in zone 1-3, where they have I assigned them 454 trees, and I can see as they close out the pruning request, as the dots change on my map. This is another thing that I'm incredibly excited about that we got up and running, was our young tree training program. This is pruning contract number 3 that we literally just started this past winter. So we had it designed so that we're having it so that we're going to prune all the trees that were planted 2 years previous. So we started pruning in 2023. So we pruned all the 2021 trees, but we had some additional funding because due to COVID and not planting the numbers we needed to plant. I was able to prune all our 2022 trees, 2019 trees, and half of our 2018 trees. And then going forward, this next upcoming winter, they'll prune all of our 2021 trees. So hopefully, over time, we'll start to create some good structure on these trees. Because if you start to look around, depending on how your program is, I noticed that the way how we used to prune, we have really bad structure, and hopefully by training these trees while they're young, we'll minimize structural issues down the road and potential storm, easier storm reduce the ability for trees to fail during storm events and stuff like that. And something I forgot to mention before, I'm obviously being involved in SMA, I'm involved with the SMA mentoring program, and talking with the person I'm mentoring, in Illinois, Grant. It's been great that I've been able to, obviously he came to SMA to want to, learn how to do more with his program, and just the sharing of ideas has been great, because then I've been able to. He's got me thinking about how I can improve this program, because we've kind of been talking about our different cycle programs that we have in place. So if you're looking to connect with somebody, I definitely highly recommend the mentoring program. Even if you sign on as a mentor, you can become a mentee as well, because you're going to get some good stuff out of it. So another thing, as a result of the master plan, but also we've been doing is we've been studying the canopy, and if you noticed before, the original data showed it was 30% in 2009, and then 28% in 2014. But since the technology that UVM is using to analyze the LiDAR data, they're able to fine tune and get more specific. So obviously it was showing that we were 26.7% 09 and then 23% 04. But it's starting to trend back up to our original number of in 2020 we were 25.5%. So we know that things are trending in the right direction, and we think that the expanded tree ordinance of requiring folks to get permits to remove trees on private property, it's folks are still going to want to remove trees, but I think it gets people thinking, like, do I really want to remove this tree, or can I afford to remove this tree, blah blah blah. So hopefully in a number of years we'll see the number go above the 2009 number. And then so obviously a big thing is in Cambridge is the heat islands. This is something that came out of the master plan as well. And as you can see here, this part of Cambridge is more open, more single family, more space for the properties, and a lot of other parts of Cambridge are more densely packed in houses where there's not a lot of space for not a lot of open space for trees in the sidewalk or in people's yards. So this is one of our big tasks: is how do we decrease the heat islands in the city? And this is a big area, right? And this is an old industrial area that's in the process of getting rebuilt, and we're seeing what can we do to make sure that when they're putting all these new buildings in, that can we put more green roofs and more trees and stuff like that to help reduce the heat island in this part of the city. So big task here. And if I don't know if you've ever been to Cambridge, you're familiar, but it's a very walkable and bikeable city, and the amount of bike lanes that have gone in, especially in the past 3 or so years, has been unbelievable. So the big task is how do we make it more enjoyable, more pleasant for folks to walk or bike in the city, and try to bike and walk under more shade. So One of the big things we're always working with the bike folks and other folks in the city. So as a part of the master plan is, studying the temperatures on the street, based on the different types of canopy percentages. So obviously, I think we pretty much all know stuff. The more trees you have on a street, the cooler it is. And this kind of leads me into, actually, I'm a little off, slides a little backwards here, but that's all right. But anyways, I'll go back to that in a sec. But anyways, in regards to tree planting, well, it's all kind of related anyways. But the cool thing about Cambridge is that I've always been a big proponent of having an inventory. That's why one of the big things when I came to the city was, get that inventory off the shelf, clean it up and see what we got. Because if you know what you have, then you know how to manage your program better. And one of the things that through going to different talks and over the years through SMA and other or associations is diversifying your urban forests, so they don't have to deal with, any major drastic pest or disease outbreaks or anything like that. So I've always been a big proponent of, diversifying the forest. So this is just an example of the different species that we have sprinkled throughout the city. And the cool thing is every planting season, we're trying to plant at least 20 to 25 to 35 different species to help maintain that diversity. We all know we all have our tried and true species that every planting season we're going to put in because they're tough as nails and they do well. But we're also trying new stuff, whether it's somebody at the nursery saying, hey, this is a really cool thing, or hearing Andy Hillman or Nancy and others talk about different trees they're coming from the nurseries. We're always trying new stuff. And obviously, as we're trending warmer in the Northeast, we're definitely bringing in more trees from the Mid-Atlantic and South to see how they do in the city. So obviously, anybody who deals in the urban environment, especially the dense urban environment, such as Cambridge, different things that we have to contend with. And an issue that I'm trying to address is that we don't plant trees in sidewalks that are less than 6 feet wide because we need to be able to maintain at least 4 feet for ADA compliance. At least in Cambridge, that's what we do. And then we leave 2 feet width for a tree well. So it's an issue there. Whereas we lose trees on streets that have sidewalks that are less than 6 feet wide, those become heat islands, and so we're trying to find ways to get more trees planted. So kind of circling back about the whole planting trees and dealing with the different heat islands is that somebody from Harvard came to me about this project, and I'm always interested in trying to let researchers or folks use Cambridge as a living working laboratory, as long as they're not going to do anything negative or want to take the trees down. So they have this project where they're going to put sensors on some trees in different parts of cities to kind of see which species, kind of test the microclimates for different species under the trees, and try to see if there's a certain species that we should be planting more to help improve the heat island in different parts of the city. So I thought that was really cool. And like I said, with us being able to divide our duties, I have more time to focus on these cool little projects like this. So the picture of the heat island. So as mentioned before, it's just, want to do our part. This is a cool part of the city here where what the heck did I just do? Where we add this bike lane, and this is all sand-based structural soil underneath here. So this existing tree is now have this extra rooting volume underneath here. And how can we create more areas of the city that have this shade over the bike lane, over the side, over the sidewalks and the roadways, and make it more enjoyable for folks to use. So that's the cool task that we have. So to kind of wrap things up, so our tree inventory is nearly complete. There's still some lingering stuff out there, but it's definitely it's complete, nearly complete, and it's associated with a work management system. So we're using it on a daily basis. Right now, our service requests that come in are inspected and resolved in time and manner. I think right now, if somebody reports something as needing to be pruned or removed, right now we're able to resolve it within 2 to 4 weeks. Right now, it's unbelievable how well we're functioning right now. And as mentioned before, when I first came into Cambridge, I had 2 pruning contracts and 1 planting contract, and now we have 3 pruning contracts, a planting contract, and EAB management contract, and the work management system we have in place helps make all these programs run smoother because, as I mentioned before, we're able to assign trees to the contractors, and they can have them on an city-issued iPad or on their phone, and it helps them manage what they need to do better. And with, as you can see, with having more personnel resources, we're able to do more programs. And our Tree USA budget for that we submitted for last year was 3.4 million. And if you recall, back in 2007, our budget was 1.4. So the city has done a great job of providing more resources, more funding for us to get the stuff done, to help improve the canopy, the urban forest in Cambridge. So burnout, not anymore. You would have asked me, a few years ago, yeah, I was burnt out. So, but that's all I got. Any questions?
David, we do have a lot of questions in the chat. Sorry for that feedback. I'll clear up. Thanks so much. That was really great. You provide that big picture along with some really specific things. It was like we took a tour of Cambridge without being there. I see a question here, and it kind of piggybacks on one I wanted to start with too. When you tell stories like this, it sounds like it was kind of instant and it all just happened. How did you get your city council so excited and wanting to support you more? And someone asked specifically how you funded that master plan and that additional staff.
So for people who are not familiar, Cambridge is a well-funded city. So it was, like I said, it was all kind of tied together. So luckily in Cambridge, ever since I've been in Cambridge, we've always had at least 2 to 3, if not 4, half the city council is always, there's always been some big tree advocates on the council. So it's always been huge in our favor that we're always going to have people at the city council level pushing for more funding and more resources for urban forestry. So with the canopy study coming out showing that we were losing canopy, and people were thinking that, if I was a betting person, I would have thought at the time that all the development was causing the canopy loss, and when it turned out it was actually residential, tree removals on residential property was the main culprit. I would have lost the bet, and so it's just folks city council decided, well, we need to put more resources to it. So it was I believe the master plan was funded 100% through the city budget. I don't think we requested any external funding for that.
Let me get back over to the chat here. For those who want CEUs, I did drop the link for the forum for submitting CEUs. It's the latest one on there, marked important, so be sure to click that if you want CEUs. Dave, somebody asked about specifically that management system. You mentioned that being really important to you. What system are you using for inventory and management work?
We are not promoting any particular one, but the one that the city came to us with, and we're loving it right now, is we're using Cartograph.
Any particular, what about it do you like so much?
It's very user friendly. I literally, this is what I do all my work on with it. We were initially given iPads, but now I pretty much do all my work through my phone. It's really user friendly, and yeah, because I think we had another program that I'm blanking on that wasn't that, it didn't integrate well, but this integrates well with our call center, our 311 C-Click Fix program that dumps the request into Cartograph, and then we can respond to the request through everything we can do all responding through Cartograph. We don't have to go into multiple different systems to deal with things. Okay.
I did take you all off that you have access to your mics now, so if you want to raise your hand and ask a question directly, feel free to do that. In the meantime, Johanna asked, was the Young Tree Training Program a workforce training program?
No. So it's just so it was, I forget, it was the professor from Florida who always does a talk about young tree training. I want to say Ed Gilman, but I apologize if I got that name wrong. But anyways, I saw his talk a number of years ago at a conference in Boston, and I thought it was great, but he didn't show any examples of doing it in the Northeast or in colder climates. So I kind of just like, it sounds great, but I didn't try it. And then he talked at the Tree Wardens Conference a couple years ago, and he had examples of doing work in Montreal and New York and a few other locations. And I was like, wait a second, if he can do this aggressive type of young tree training in these northern climates, that means that we can probably get away with doing it. So therefore, I went and this was all coming from the master plan as well, but I finally was like, let's do it. And it turns out that the forestry program next door to us in the city of Somerville had literally just launched their young tree training program. So I literally reached out to the tree warden there and said, hey, can I have your program, your copy of your contract? I literally just copied and pasted it, swapped out Somerville for Cambridge, put out the bid, and it's been great. But it doesn't involve working with like a workforce development type of program. That's one of the next things that I want to do, is try to get more folks from involved in the green industry.
Yeah. Well, I was doing something somewhat similar in Iowa, in Des Moines, where I am, and we were using volunteers. And some of you might be covering your ears. I know there's kind of some debate about using volunteers on tree pruning. We were doing a tree training program where we were training volunteers to plant and care for trees. We called them tree keepers. I know Fred's on the call. I think he does that in Baltimore as well. And they went through training, and then they were on site with forestry staff at first to do the training. And then we were to the point where if they had come out with us a few times, we would release them on their own to do training. Or pruning, sorry. So while that's not an official workforce program, it was a way to try and get more young tree pruning done faster. Denise, if I'm saying your name right, you had your hand up. Feel free to come off mute if you'd like. Otherwise, I do see your question. Oh, go ahead.
Yes, hi. It's Tennis from Lawrence, Mass, just up the street from Dave. I'm wondering, what tree species do you most commonly use in your streetscape planting? Because everyone seems to use Gleditsia because it's just such a great bulletproof tree, but it's so overplanted. And we try to mix in gymnocladas because it's similar in appearance. It's a nice analog to the honey locust. But what else is out there that you think can be as tough and be, work out in some really confined streetscape plantings?
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely share that information with you, but some of the trees that come off the top of my head. Now, keep in mind now, like I said, with the expansion of us having more personnel, I'm not as involved with tree planting as I used to be. So the different species we're planting is starting to fade in my head a little bit. But I know some of the tried and true that we've gone with is definitely elm, London plane, swamp white oak. Trying to think what else off the top of my head here. For ornamentals, serviceberry has been great. Trying to think what else. There's some other ones, but yeah, honey locust is definitely one we've scaled back on. With us having the inventory and analyzing it, we don't plant. We right now I think it's Gleditsia, Acer, and Quercus are just over 10% in our inventory. So we're still planting some of them, but we're not trying to plant as much, and we're trying to plant other species to kind of get those numbers below 10 over time. But definitely send me an email. I can definitely get more information over to you. And anybody else who wants more information, I'm always willing to share, and I'm always willing to do ride-alongs too. So if you're ever in Cambridge, let me know. We can do a ride-along for a few hours.
Nice. And there was a question. I will include Dave's contact information when I send the follow-up. William, I see your hand up. Feel free to come off mute.
Hey Dave, thanks again for a really great talk. The question I had was, because I've studied what you guys did in Cambridge, and I'm trying to apply it here in Sandy Springs. We're a fairly well-funded city, but I'm trying to understand how to plan and plant for succession. We have some pretty impacted forest stands, and I'm trying to communicate the need for selective thinning and planting for very purposeful diversity, so that in 10, 15, 25 years, the forest will be where it needs to be. But a lot of folks want to plant for ecosystem services today, right? Shade trees today, water quality, storm management, all that kind of stuff. So how do we compromise? How do we balance planting for the future and planting for the ecosystem services today, especially as we know that tolerance and hardiness zones are shifting with ongoing climate change? I just wanted to know if you guys were thinking about that in the Northeast. Thank you.
Yeah. So I think that goes back to my slide about tree planting. Like I said before, we plant anywhere from 25 to 35 different species of trees. with the basic the core being our tried and true that we know, like the swamp white oak, the elms, and London plains and stuff like that. But like I said, we're also trying to plant other species that are maybe more prominent down in the mid-Atlantic or other parts of the country or even the world. So I guess we're kind of hoping. We're planting for I know that we're planting for diversity now to mitigate for any type of major pest or disease outbreak, because there's always something coming down the road for us, like obviously the new thing that knocking on our door, spotted lanternfly. But I guess I'm kind of hoping, but by us planting for diversity now, that hopefully will help answer that question 15, 20, 50 years down the road. Hopefully right now we're not creating a headache for the second, third, or fifth city arborist, whoever comes after me, or the current folks in the forestry division. Hopefully I answered that the best I could. So I'm just.
William did make a comment. It sounds like it's making sure to focus on folks coming after. I just dropped in the chat. We are at the top of the hour. I'm going to stay on just a little bit longer. David, do you have just a few more minutes?
Yeah, my next meeting's not till 2:15, so I can stay on for
Okay, sounds good. So if you can stay, feel free. If you need to sign off, please feel free. The link again for CEUs is in the chat. Breck, you have your hand up.
Yeah, hey Dave, this is Breck in Somerville.
Hey.
I was just wondering if you could say a little bit more about your strategy for working with contractors to avoid tree damage, both in city projects and when the utilities are working around trees.
Oh, that's like a whole other hour-long presentation. Yeah, in a nutshell, we have this city of Cambridge is big on preserving trees. So, but obviously at the same time, we respect that contractors have a job to do. So we try to find a happy medium. So some of the things that I've implemented over the years is that, air spraying. When I first came into the city and mentioned air spraying, they were just like, you're nuts. What you want me to do? What? Blow the soil around the roots? Now, nobody even bats an eye. Every contractor's like, don't worry, Dave, we already have a contractor set up to do some air spraying for the project. So that's great. Another thing is, so every spring, engineering division asked me to give a talk to all the contractors, trees and construction presentation, to kind of talk about how to best practices around the existing trees. And one year I scared the crap out of I don't know what I said, but I scared the crap out of all the contractors about damaging roots. And I was getting phone calls, emails, text messages for a couple weeks about the tiniest roots in the world. And I was like, I can't drop everything and keep on visiting all these different sites. So I eventually came up with an idea that, it can be your biggest person on your crew, but if you can get your forefinger and thumb around that root, you can cleanly cut it and move on with whatever your task is. But if you cannot wrap your finger around, you cannot touch that tree, and you got to get in contact with myself or somebody in the forestry division, and we've got to find a workaround for that particular tree issue, tree and construction related issue. So that has definitely helped the contractors a lot in regards to being better with the tree roots. And then just emphasizing that, you may be on site doing a job, you may be on site for 15 minutes or maybe 2 years, but what you do to that tree can have a lasting impact for many years down the road. And I call them, ticking time bombs. Do not cause tree root issues that are going to cause a tree to potentially fall over years down the road because the structural roots were compromised for a certain project. But I have a whole other presentation I can give on that sometime. But hopefully I kind of answered that in a nutshell. But I can definitely go on and on about trees and construction.
And that's a great idea. I hadn't heard that about engineering asking to present to the contractors. Is there a requirement for contractors to come in once a year to learn about new permitting or something that engineering requires?
No, just Cambridge is it's a well-oiled machine. So there's actually a contractor meeting when construction season opens, which I'm not sure if it opened this week or next week, but more or less all the contractors are required to attend a weekly meeting. I think it's Monday morning, and in the early part of the season, they ask different folks from different divisions to come in. So I'm always asked to come in and give the trees and construction talk, and just it's either a refresher for a lot of contractors or it's good information for new folks who are coming into the city to do work.
Okay, that's interesting. That's a good idea. Well, we're getting kind of after the top of the hour. I think we should look at wrapping. I know we've got a good question. Cody, I see your comment about tree protection zones. We actually had City of Austin. It's not quite that, but talked about tree preservation and their rules around tree preservation. That is a recording, and I can share it after this, but we can certainly talk about working with contractors because I'm driving around this city just upset when I see how trees are treated during construction. As we're wrapping here, I really want to thank everyone who's joined us. If you're a member, thank you so much for being a member of SMA. You heard David here mention multiple times how he has reached out to other SMA members to hear from them, learn from them. David, you're shaking your head. Maybe you could just quickly share some of your experience there.
Oh, it's the wealth of information that I've gotten, especially from folks from SMA, because you're meeting folks from all over the country and beyond, has been great. Especially and we all know this, but when you go to conferences, you get a lot of good information from the conference itself. But usually when you're at the bar afterwards, and you're sharing your war stories, that's when you really start passing around a lot of ideas, like the tree planting sticker, which I'm not going to get into, but I got that from Jeremy Barrett from New York City, and some of the other things that I've gotten over the years. It's been huge. So I highly recommend, even if you can't get involved with SMA, which we want you to get involved with SMA, of course, but get involved with your local organization and network, because that's how you really grow your program. You learn what's going well in other communities and what's not going well, or ways you can exchange ideas and stuff like that. So I highly recommend just getting involved with SMA and other organizations.
Yep. Exactly. Hope you can join us. If not, we want the best. We want more trees in the ground and more trees maintained. So however you can get that information, great. We will look forward to seeing you next time. And with that, we'll wrap up. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.